Followers of Islam, the so-called religion of peace, celebrate in the streets as one of their own slaughters a Jewish family of 5. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Counsel Action and Associate Dean with Liberty University School of Law, in again today for Matt Staver, and joining me in studio is Shawn Akers, Dean of Liberty's Helms School of Government and Policy Analyst with Liberty Counsel. Well, Shawn, there are few things that stir the emotion like the senseless murder of children. And a beautiful family, the Fogel family, an Israeli couple, and their 3 young children were recently slaughtered, murdered, stabbed to death in a bloody, horrific scene of terror that I think really captures and embodies and clarifies, at least for me, and I think hopefully for many people around the world, this debate that we have between this ongoing battle that we have seen between Islam and the rest of the world, primarily the Jewish nation. It is just an absolutely horrific, but what I think, the murder of these 5 people is a horrible, satanic event in and of itself. But I think what is politically troubling to me about this is that after this occurred in the streets of Gaza, Palestinians in droves and mobs celebrated in the streets, handing out candy. Shawn, there are just some things that are good and evil. There is black and white in this ongoing battle between Islam and the rest of the world. It is just that black and white.
And Matt, the muted response from the rest of the world is very telling too. There have been obvious condemnations of the murders, but still not to the level. If this were in the United States, there would be a manhunt for the serial killers, bar none, because it would be the things that movies are made of. But if it's a Jewish family in Israel killed by Palestinian activists, then all of a sudden it's given this almost air of legitimacy, like it's something that you shouldn't have done, but we all kind of understand because you've been so persecuted, because it's in occupied territory. Well, let's look at the facts, Matt. Let's look at the real facts here. What we've got is a father named Udi who was 36 years old. We've got a mother named Ruth who was 35 years old. We've got a little boy named Yoav who was 11 years old. He was 11 years old, stabbed to death in his bed. His little brother Elad, 4 years old, stabbed to death in his bed. And then we've got their little brother Hadass, who was 3 months old, stabbed to death, lying in his bed next to his father. That's 5 members of the family. The little girl, Tamar, came home and survived this because these terrorists had overlooked 2 of her little brothers. This was a family of 8. Now there are 3 children who have lost 3 little brothers and 2 parents. And somehow this is not seemed as the tragedy that it would be in the United States or elsewhere, because these are Jewish people in Israel killed under these apparent political motivations. But you've got an entire family wiped out, 3 children left without parents or siblings, and people are celebrating in the streets, handing out treats, handing out candies to celebrate the murder of these individuals. Now, Matt, you've pointed out some things are black and white. Now, there is no justification under the sun. I don't care how it's painted. I don't care what political justification you give for this. Anyone who can justify this set of murders has lost their minds.
Well, Shawn, I recently caught a great deal of flack from the leftists for making a statement on a radio program. And I said that Islam is satanic. Now, that is a very general, sweeping statement, but when you look to the tenets and the dictates of the Quran, which says that you either enslave, convert, or kill the infidel, and that is everybody who does not follow Islam, that is a central tenet of this peaceful religion of Islam. And why should we be surprised when we see it carried out in such a way, and when we see its followers celebrating in such a way, when it is carried out, when these Jewish people who Islam says are lower than pigs, why should we be surprised when what the Quran teaches is actually put to practice? Yet we have a president right now who has done everything that he can within his power to undermine Israel, has aligned himself with the Palestinian Authority, has aligned himself with those who represent those who were out celebrating and passing out candy, celebrating the slaughter of this precious family. We have a president who is sympathetic toward that and is hostile toward the victims here, those who were murdered. Now, Shawn, they talk about, and who is, the left, they use the semantics and the language of radical Islamists and say that the Jews have occupied or occupying Palestine, which is and it does not exist. Palestine, as you pointed out earlier in a conversation, is a euphemism. Shawn, share a little bit about why. I know you are very well read and on this topic particularly. Why is that area occupied, and who attacked who that set up the circumstances for the situation we find ourselves in the Middle East right now?
Well, Matt, unfortunately, it would take a lot more time than we have here today to trace the changing of the hands of property, of land in Israel. It's changed hands many times, almost always through force. But let's just in the few minutes that we have, let's put it into context with an analogy. Recently, a movie came out in the United States called Machete. I don't know if you remember that coming out. There are a contingency of people in the United States who claim that portions of the United States belong to Mexico, and they fully support the violent uprising against Americans to take that back for Mexico. So if you put yourself in the position, without even reaching this argument of who Southern California actually belongs to, put yourself in the position of Israel having Qassam rockets lobbed over the Mexican border, having people steal over that border from Mexico and slaughter a family of 5, leaving 3 of the family of 8 still alive, little babies without a mother, without a father, and the 3-month-old, 4-year-old, and 10-year-old little boys stabbed to death in their beds in Southern California. And all this takes on quite a different context. Whatever the political dimensions are of this, the tactics that are overlooked here, and you've seen this given very little attention, even in the media at all.
Oh, sure.
If this were in the United States,
it doesn't fit the narrative.
It does not fit the narrative.
Shawn, the narrative is that the big bad Israel is oppressing and persecuting the poor little Palestinians. And when the reality doesn't match up with the narrative, you're not going to see. That's the media will spike it.
Well, that's right. Now, if Israel sends a helicopter over and attacks the house of this person, if they find this terrorist and they attack his house,
and they've padded the house with their family members, and innocents die,
that, my friend, will make the news,
of course.
And it'll make cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle of the news. But the cold-blooded murder, the stabbing to death of these little babies, is not going to make the news, because exactly as you said, it doesn't fit the narrative. But this is an opportunity for people to wake up and to begin to see what's really going on.
Well, Shawn, as for me and my family, we stand with Israel. And folks, I pray for this family and ask that you would join us in praying for this family, that you would pray for the state of Israel that finds itself surrounded and with very few friends in this world. Pray for peace in Israel, and pray that those who are guilty of this atrocity would be punished and that justice would be served. And finally, pray that God's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. Go to lc.org to learn more about Liberty Counsel.